Hey guys, what's up? It's Lizzy Jane, and we are back with another episode of the podcast. I hope you guys had a lovely, relaxing, chill Thanksgiving. And if your Thanksgiving was the opposite of that, I'm sorry, and I'm glad we're past it. I had the pleasure of meeting up and sitting down with Tori Letzler. She is an incredible individual that has worked in many spaces of the entertainment industry. TINYKVT is the electronic alias of Tori. She is a vocalist, producer, DJ, composer who has released and gained support from incredible electronic dance labels such as Bassrush by Insomniac, Deadbeats, Lowly, Universal Music, and Dim Mak. She is developing such a cool sound. She has an EP on the way that she is finishing now. We talk about, having unique styles in the electronic space and how it's such a differently paved path than most travel in their journey of building a project. And I've been wanting to speak with Tori for such a long time. In addition to the TINYKVT project, she is incredibly credited in the world of scoring and composing for film and TV. She has been working in that industry for over a decade. She recently scored the full Netflix series In From the Cold, as well as singing on over 50 scores from legendary composers, including Hans Zimmer and many more. She's worked on some of your favorite video games. You've heard her voice in some of your favorite electronic dance music songs to your favorite movies and everything in between. It was such an honor again to speak with her. Listen to the whole conversation. It is worth it. We go in on all different fronts. Again, I hope you guys had a lovely holiday season. I'm glad we are back. I am sitting down with some incredible guests that you are going to hear from this month and into January, which will now officially be the debut of the season 2 premiere of the Lizzy Jane Podcast. We have lots of new things coming, so get ready, enjoy this month, take a chill pill, enjoy time with your friends, your family, time away from work, hopefully. And without further ado, this is Lizzy Jane, and you're tuning into my podcast with special guest, TINYKVT. Hey guys, so lately I've seen a ton of larger shows I've been playing at that a lot of these festivals and venues are no longer allowing bags that are not clear. Well, guess what? Lunchbox Packs is coming in clutch again. They have just stepped up their anti-theft bags by releasing a fully clear hydration pack and snack pack. This is an absolute game changer for your summer festivals and events. Each bag is made out of TPU material that is incredibly durable, flexible, and made to not alter under extreme sun exposure over time. You also have the option to bring a skin in your bag on the way in, and once you're through that security line, you can zip on your skin for privacy of your belongings and to add some extra personalized fun flair. These hydration packs meet the majority of all festival regulations and guidelines. As always, these packs have all of the awesome anti-theft features as the original hydration and snack packs. Make sure you use code LizzyJane for $10 off any hydration pack and code LizzyJ for $5 off any snack pack. I will see you at the rave. The show today was brought to you by VitaPlur E-Boost Gum. With no pill to take or powders to mix, VitaPlur E-Boost Gum is a first-of-its-kind energy rave supplement that provides magnesium, electrolytes, and antioxidants while you chew. VitaPlur is the perfect complement to my active lifestyle, whether it's at the festival, on the road touring, or hitting the gym. Chew VitaPlur and dance with confidence. Use code LizzyJane for 10% off any order. Denver is like the place where people go when they move to LA and they don't like it. Like that's how
I love LA, but I've also been here for 11 years, so it's a little different.
Being in LA for that long. I was in LA as a child a lot, and I did some acting stuff and was 4th, 5th, 6th grade
And then after like middle school, was not back until post 18. And just in that amount of time, so much has changed. So I can't imagine you being in LA for the greater much so of a decade, seeing just like the ebbs and flows of so many different industries that you work in as well.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, LA is not for them, but I've been here 11 years. And for like the first, actually, we're almost on 12 years now, but for the first like 3 years, actually, no, I'd say for the first like 6 or 7 years, now I'm thinking about it, I was only involved in like scoring.
Okay.
So I didn't start like this project, TINYKVT, until I started DJing under the name TINYKVT in, I think, 2018, but just for fun, like at like Burning Man pretty much exclusively.
I love that. That's when I started
then,
Lizzy Jane too, 2018, just for fun.
And then I started working on music again, just for fun. Like it was I've always been really into EDM, and I started going to major festivals. And like, when I say major festivals, I mean like EDC, in like 2014, 2015. But I mean, this is going to like age me, but I went to like Deadbeats' original Cube tour in like 2009 or 2010. That's where I started, but I wasn't going to like festivals. I was going to one-off shows. And then around like 2018, 2019, people started hitting me up in the electronic world about doing vocals. And that was like a really new thing to me. And I was like, yeah, I'm down. I didn't know anything about it. I was so like clueless. And I was like, this will be fun. But because I was just like doing things for fun, I ended up singing on a lot of stuff that I like didn't resonate with me, didn't like. I didn't have much say in the production of it. And I've been producing music and writing music for, over a decade. So, and I do all my own vocals, like everything I do. So to like have no control, I just had a lot of stuff come out that I didn't like under my real name. And so to differentiate from my name and from scoring, especially because it was really confusing to have those things starting to pop up on Spotify.
Yeah.
I rebranded as TINYKVT. It pretty much stopped doing top line, except for like people that I really resonate with, or like friends of mine that I really trust, and mostly sing only on collabs or my own tracks. And I dropped like the first TINYKVT track in 2020 in March or February with Swarm. That was our collab, like Devil's at Your Door, which is still one of my, like, that's the track that everybody knows. I love that track. I love Brandon. He's amazing. But then the world shut down. Like a month later.
Love a good world shutdown. Yeah.
So like, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make music. I'm so excited. The track did really well. And then everything shut down. All shows ended. Like, I was like, all right, fuck. I don't know what I'm going to do now. So I was like trying to, all my work stopped because film and television couldn't film. So we had some things that were already filmed that we could work on kind of, but like everything stopped for me. So I started working more on TINYKVT and trying to figure out my sound. And I was listening to a lot of outside voices on what I should be doing.
It's hard. That's a hard route because everybody's always going to have their like cup of tea, especially in this socket and field of music.
Exactly. And I was so new to the community and everything. And it's not that anyone was trying to do me a disservice. It's just that like everybody had input and I didn't know who to listen to first. And so I was letting other people kind of sway my direction. And I listened to so much music at the time within the genre that like I just had so many different things going in my head and I didn't really know like where I was going to land. So like my first few releases like don't sound anything like the current project. And that's fine. It's all growth and I learned so much from those releases. But I'd say like my first release besides the collab with Swarm, which is funny because that's what my music sounds like now. And I feel like I did what I wanted the first time when nobody was in my ear, and then people got in my ear and I changed what I was doing. And now that I stopped giving a fuck and I have an amazing manager who like is so honest with me and supports what I'm doing and loves my current sound, that it's been really positive. So like everything in the last like year, especially, has just been like me last year and a half. And I'm working on an EP now that is like 100% the most solid I've felt about the direction of my sound.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the introduction. And for those who are listening who may not be familiar with you, you sit in a very unique lane all of your own, really. I've had a lot of people from the scoring world, and I've had a lot of people, obviously DJs, artists, people who work in the industry, but I think you're the first person who's highly accredited really on both sides. And I think that's like a very interesting position just to be in. Like, you've done extensive scoring work for video games, you've done extensive work in like the back end of the industry, creating sample packs for Splice, working with brands like Yamaha and more. And then you have, the songs that you featured on before the TINYKVT project. And now you've kind of stepped into your own, where you did Lost Lands this year, you've done a release with Deadbeats, and now you're working on your debut EP. And it's really just kind of like a mind fuck on how you are approach. It really is, because you're so like accomplished in so many things, and like your
Thank
IMDb
you.
and like your resume is just like, there's so many things that you do that I'm like, how do you do that? Like, I wish I like had my foot in the door to do this. And like, cause like where I started, which is kind of why I've just really wanted to have this conversation, is I wanted to be in the world of scoring, but I ended up being a DJ and being a producer. And it's like the different industries and the way that, pursuing your passion and your project as an artist and building that up is so different than the work that you do behind the scenes and as a vocalist.
Night and day.
Night and day. And still, yet you're growing and continuously doing awesome projects and building on both sides. I mean, I guess I would love to know kind of how you got into scoring, because the EDM side of things is very similar. And I feel like I hear really a lot of the same deal when it comes to electronic dance music. It's like, I was hugely involved in the scene. It was something I loved. And then you realize what you're doing outside of electronic dance music and you go, light bulb moment. Oh, I can do this too. How do I do this? But you're very like, I'm just going to put my toe in the sand, in the water, whatever. And you make all of these like mistakes and figure things out and do this and do that. And I feel like so many times that's why you see people have this like previous project or this previous kind of like chapter in their electronic dance music endeavors. And then when they figured it all out, they're like, okay, now I'm going to start this project and this is what I'm going to pursue. But even with Lizzy Jane, I mean, you're working on your debut EP. My debut EP is coming out 2024. I've been doing Lizzy Jane since 2018. I mean, like finding that sound, especially in a time where everything is either extremely oversaturated, TikTok world, or they want you to be cookie cutter, but all of the fans and consumers want like something different and unique. It's really difficult to navigate. So I mean, do you feel like you juggle all of this fairly well, or has it kind of been a learning curve? Like, has there been successes and frustrations in the scoring and, kind of like sample pack world that have translated into the EDM world and you pursuing your project? Or do you approach them as like two totally different entities that you're continuing to build?
In the beginning, they were totally separate.
Mm-hmm.
But since TINYKVT has gotten bigger than I thought it was going to get in a short amount of time, and I'm still like a tiny artist. Oh, sorry, something's popping up on my screen. I'm still like a tiny artist, in my opinion. But it's still bigger than where I expected it to be, starting off as basically a pandemic hobby.
Yeah.
And for scoring, I've been doing it for so long. And it's funny because so many people in EDM want to get into scoring. And I get messages about advice all the time on how to get into sync, how to get into scoring. And I tell them, like, I'm not going to be able to give you the advice you want to hear because I had to work I didn't get like a quote unquote break, which I still don't know that I've gotten until I scored my Netflix series in 2021, 2022. I moved to LA in like 2011, 2012. That's 10 years.
Yep, everybody says that 10-year mark, no matter what you're doing, it's difficult.
It's like, you just have to, like they say, like, you're not a master of your craft until you put like 10,000 hours in or something. And I even think that is a low ball, like number. You know, I started out, I went to school at, well, I guess first of all, I should rewind. Similar to you, I started as a performer as a kid, in New York, and I was a singer. I've been singing professionally since like the age of 7, which sounds insane, but that's true. I sang with the Metropolitan Opera Children's Choir in New York from like 9 to 13. And then at 14, I went on tour with Cirque du Soleil. So I did that for like 2.5 years. I was touring all over the world. I left home at 13 and I haven't moved back since. And so my childhood was not normal at all. I was a performer. I came back and did high school for like a year and a half. I graduated early. I came out to LA for like 3 months and slept on somebody's couch at like the age of 17, 18. Cause at that time I was like, I still want to be a performer. Maybe I want to be an actor. And then I realized quickly that I absolutely hate being on camera for the most part.
Yeah.
So that wasn't going to work. I just feel like now if I'm doing like, I direct and make a lot of my own music videos for my project, but it's me controlling the situation. When it was somebody else controlling the situation and saying somebody else's words, similar to like doing top line, I like to, you know, be in control of the creative process. So I'd always been in love with scoring. I'd written music my whole life. I used to tour with a keyboard, with Cirque, and I, you know, taken piano. And basically, I was on track to go to a conservatory for vocals. And all of the schools that I applied to and auditioned for were a conservatory for vocals. And it was primarily classical voice, which is what I was doing for a long time, which is crazy when I think about it now. And I got into a lot of very good schools for that. But I had this thing in the back of my head where like I wanted to explore some form of writing music. So I applied to Berklee College of Music. It was the only school that I applied to that was not a classical conservatory. It was also the only school that I didn't get a scholarship to when I got into. And thankfully my parents really supported me and were like, if you want to go do this, we'll let you do this. I had worked so long as a kid that I had built up quite a savings, just from years and years of working and not being able to touch that money until I was like 18.
Yeah,
I could touch some of it, but you know, it between that and my parents putting stuff away, I'm very grateful I was in a really good position. And then once I got into Berklee, I was able to gain a small scholarship from the work I was doing there, which was great. But I've always loved film scoring. You know, I've been a cinephile my entire life. And at Berklee, the first year you can't really pick your major, or the first semester. You have to like take a bunch of intro classes and try stuff. And so I took an intro to film scoring class. And I didn't really have any theory training besides vocally. Like I didn't, in terms of, all I knew was how to play piano and just like the basics. I was never an amazing piano player. I couldn't like play classical from memory. But I took this intro class and I was like, I want to try this. This is what I want to do. I might fail. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I have no connections in this industry. I don't have anything, but I'm going to do it. So that's what I did. And I found out that I really liked it. I did really well in my classes. I had a professor that really believed in me. And I spent like a lot of time having him as like a mentor. And he also really pushed me in my classes. And then I went and did an internship. And I think it was my junior year, in Los Angeles. And I did an internship for 2 different composers. One was just like kind of like a PBS, like small composer at the time. And then I worked at a production house for trailers and featurettes and stuff like that, with a composer and a music supervisor there. When I came back from LA, they offered me a job, and I still had X amount of dollars in a savings account. And I made the decision. I was like, you know, I can take a risk and move here and do this job with this amount of money in my pocket until I get on my feet. Or I can put it into my senior year as tuition and then move out with no money at all. So I made the decision to take a risk and move out to LA.
Smart decision. Good decision.
It was until I lost that job, like 2 weeks into it. They were like, hey, we're cutting the budget for the music department. You can work in the mailroom until you find another job. Yeah. So I was
Love
making
that.
like,
very LA.
I was making $10 an hour. And I had to drive like a truck to all across LA and back. At the time, studios would deliver like physical like tapes of movies to like, they couldn't like send much stuff over the internet at this time. It was 10 plus years ago. So I would physically deliver in safes like these pictures back and forth to Sony and Warner Brothers and back to the production house. And I did that for a few months. And then I kind of remembered when I was in LA for my internship, 6 months ago before that, I had taken a tour of Remote Control, which was Hans Zimmer's studio. Still is.
Yep.
And after the tour, there was probably like 20 of us in the tour, all interns. And we got to sit in with a composer named Jeff Sinelli. And he's still someone I work with currently. We just did something together. But at the time, he was working on like one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. And at the end of his little like spiel and tour with the students, he was like, if anybody wants to stay after, I'm going to keep working. You're welcome to stay here and watch me work. Ask me any questions, blah, blah. I was the only person that stayed out of 20, which is shocking to me.
Isn't that incredible? Like when you're given that window of opportunity and people they just don't take it. It's wild to me because I see it happen all the time now. And I'm just like, how are you? It's like when opportunity meets like your like window and just like where you are in the right time, right place. It's just like, how do you not take it? Wild.
Yeah. So I stayed, and what ended up happening through that was I stayed, chatted with Jeff a lot. We really hit it off. He took me over to the mixing room, or one of the mixing rooms at Hans' studio, and Alan Meyerson was mixing in there, who, if you know much about how scores are made, Alan Meyerson mixed like all the Batman scores for Hans. I mean, a lot of the other Chris Nolan movies. He just mixed, I think it's Fallen Jedi, the new Star Wars game that came out for Gordy Hobb. Like he's one of the biggest mixers in scoring, if not the biggest mixer, and a lovely human being. So we hit it off. We all chatted and hung out that night. And then, I went back to LA, did my thing. I stayed in touch with Jeff. When time came, when I lost my job, I emailed him and said, hey, I know you mentioned you might be in the, looking for an assistant. Is that still a possibility? I'd love to like put my name in the hat, And he was like, yeah, at this time, I don't really need a second person, but let me get you in touch with the person who hires for remote and hires their interns and see if we can work something out. So he put me in touch with that person. I got brought on to do an internship. It was something like 5 weeks. I made another risky decision. For a minute, for the first like week or two, I was working my full-time job and interning at remote, which meant I was working at Remote Control from 8 a.m. till like 2 p.m. or something. And I lived in Burbank at the time, which for those of you who are not in LA, Hans' studio was in Santa Monica. They are complete opposite ends of the city.
So far.
So I lived in Burbank at the time and worked there. So I would drive from Burbank at like 6 a.m. to get to remote at 8 a.m. I worked from like 8 to 2 or something in the afternoon. Then I didn't have a lunch break. I would drive to my other job, and I worked the late night shift from like 3 to like midnight or something. And I was doing this 5 days a week for like 2 or 3 weeks. And I was just dying. I was like, this is not sustainable.
Not sustainable.
I was like, all right, I need to quit my full-time job. I have X amount of time and the internship and just figure it out. So I did that. And through that process, I had to take on a bunch of other little jobs. Like I started teaching voice lessons, which I never should have been doing. Like I have a ton of training, but like it's very specific thing to teach voice lessons, and whatever. So I was doing that. At one point, I took a job as a receptionist at a yoga studio. Like I was doing anything I could just to make ends meet, because the internship, which they don't really do anymore, but that internship was unpaid. So at the end of the 5 weeks, they ended up offering me a position to be a studio runner and assistant. And I took it. That job started at $8 an hour.
Love
So
it.
again, still had to do multiple jobs.
There's no way.
Well, what I ended up doing is I'd work at the yoga studio from 5 in the morning till 11 a.m. Again, not take a proper lunch break. And I'd get to remote at noon and work noon to technically it was probably like noon to 10 or something. But my goal was to just get noticed. So I would stay around as long as people were there.
Yeah.
And like I'd go around to people's studios. I'd offer to like wrap their cables for them, do cable management. I did coffee orders, food orders, all the boring stuff that you do. But I was in Hans' studio and I was interacting with Hans and all these. There's
legendary
legends under that roof. I
Yeah.
mean, Ramin Djawadi was there at the time. He started doing Game of Thrones, and I was there. I sat in for the Reigns of Castamere session, which at the time, like, no one really knew how big that show was going to be. I remember I was watching his dog in the session, like stuff like that was like a daily occurrence. I met Ron Howard on my first day at the studio. He was like in the kitchen getting coffee. Like, it was crazy, and it's something I'm forever grateful for.
That makes it all worth it, though. You know, I mean, I have chills.
I was dead broke, but
yeah, but it's like that, like so much of like what we do, like no matter like what form of entertainment you're in, is like based on those risks where like you don't know, like you're putting yourself in this very vulnerable position where there is no plan B, there is no sense of security. You throw yourself and you say, okay, this is going to work or it doesn't work. And even though you were like bottom of the totem pole, you were in those rooms and people saw your face and they saw your name. And I'm sure that a lot of those early days were credited to where you are now.
100%. I mean, I started I don't remember how this happened, but it was really stupid. I like when I started working at Hans's, I was like, I'm going to be a serious composer. I'm not going to sing for people. I'm not going to be a vocalist anymore. They'll never take me seriously. And that was the dumbest thing that I could have possibly done. But somehow somebody found out that I sang with Cirque du Soleil. And this composer by the name of Lauren Balfe, who I still work with today, he's incredible. He scored Black Widow and Black Adam. He's done the Call of Duty games. Like, he's done a ton of stuff. He's a huge, huge composer. The recent Mission Impossible was him. He needed a vocalist on a little indie film. And he asked me if I'd be interested in trying some stuff out. So I did. It went really, really well. And then from that point on, all the composers under that roof started hiring me. Again, though, I didn't really know what I was doing and I was getting paid very little. I didn't understand union versus non-union and what an hourly should be. And yeah, it was a whole thing. But I'm still incredibly grateful, especially to Lauren. He's a dear friend now, for taking that risk on me and putting me in that film. Yeah, I was there for like 3 years and some change. And I kind of didn't I stayed bottom-ish of the totem pole for a while. And I was in this weird place of like, I was still a studio assistant. I helped kind of everybody, but I was doing vocals on Batman v Superman. So I had these like weird relationships because I was working directly with Hans, but I wasn't writing for Hans. And that was always really tough for me because I feel like I was getting put in a little bit of a box where people only wanted to work with me as the assistant and the vocalist and never gave me a shot to really write. And eventually, I'd made like enough relationships and stuff that I ended up getting a music coordinator job, which was helping music supervisors at a production house. And I was like, I'm going to go do this and try and get projects for scoring on my own with the credits I've already gained from doing American Horror Story, Batman v Superman, Thor, and see what I can do. Because if I stay under this roof, it's very clear that no one is going to give me that opportunity for whatever reason. I also had a very hard time getting hired as an individual assistant to a composer. I know for a fact that I lost certain jobs or during interview process because of being a woman, and I don't have a problem saying that. I think a lot of that has changed now, but often I was judged for the way that I look or my gender, and that was a really hard pill to swallow. So I just felt like I needed to get on my own or start following my own path, or I'd be forever stuck in this like assistant studio loop.
Like we'll use you and we'll use you for what you're good at, but we're not going to give you an opportunity to really shine and really grow and really do what you're here to actually do. And,
correct.
And especially, obviously, over in the DJ world, in the EDM world, we deal with that as well, but it's different. We're, on the business side of things, agents may be twice our age and old males, but who you're working with, I'm sure 10 years ago in the world of scoring is all people your dad's age, and they're looking at you.
EDM is such a young industry, and I love that. I mean, I'm not going to say how old I am, but I'm definitely older than a lot of artists starting out, and that's okay with me. But it's nice to be around people in my same age group versus scoring. It's a lot of very, very old men. There's a lot of like boys club, and it's gotten so much better. A lot of big executives are now women. There's a lot more diversity happening. We're getting a lot, streamers are really, really doing a lot to include younger or just fresher talent, not even younger, just people that haven't necessarily gotten that opportunity. And that's been really nice. I think this old studio system is breaking, and we're going to see a lot of new talent cropping up and, gaining the notoriety for the years and years of work that they've done. And not to belittle anybody's experience in EDM, because I know that sexism is a thing and it exists in every industry. That being said, the amount of sexism I have faced in scoring versus EDM is vastly different. And I am grateful to now be a part of an industry that seems to be a lot more accepting, especially now. I think it's gotten a lot better in recent years. I mean, the fact that Lost Lands put 4 women on a stage and gave Jeannie the opportunity to do the girl gang lineup and stage was such a huge thing to see. And being on that stage and being lucky to be a part of that, and having 4 women who were all friends with each other. A lot of us have worked with each other. Everyone stayed for everyone's sets, and everyone was there supporting each other. In the weeks leading up to it, we were all talking about our sets and sending visuals. And like, I have never felt that level really of support and just like camaraderie. And it was a really powerful energy on that stage. I did something similar a few years back, of the Me Too movement. Where I did 2 concerts called The Future is Female, and they were concerts featuring 12 women, female composers, all showcasing pieces for either film or TV they'd done or original pieces. And that was a really cool experience. And that's the only other time I've experienced that kind of camaraderie.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the second concert we did at the Wiltern in LA, it sold very, very well. And we had executives basically from every studio, from Netflix, Warner Brothers. It was pretty incredible. And one of those composers was just nominated for an Oscar last year.
We love that. And I mean, I will say, as a testament to Jeff, Excision,
Sorry, my computer's dying. One second.
Oh, no, you're good.
Got it.
Perfect. That's literally me. I have a PC Alienware, and like the battery life on it is little to none, and like my screen will start, my little alien will start flashing, and when it does that, and I'm like in a lesson, I'm like, fuck, I was like, I've got 30 seconds, give me 1 second, I'll be right back. And I have to like plug it in from the wall. And a testament to Jeff Excision is that I've been on enough tours to where I feel like I've been able to read between the lines and just feel like, okay, you're a representation of kind of a token female DJ here, versus we're supporting you because we believe in you and we like the music that you create. And anytime I have been a part of anything with Excision's name on it, or Mary or his wonderful team behind it,
Mary's incredible.
She's incredible. But it goes back to your whole discussion on the scoring side of things. It starts from the top down, whether it's in the agencies, whether it's on the teams or the A&Rs. the more women that are on the back end in executive leading roles, the more change you will see with the performers on the front end. And that's something that goes like apple to tree, A to B, like very, very easily read if you see the back end versus the front end. I've always felt at home, safe, not uncomfortable, and that they've put me in a certain place because they like what I'm doing. And I have been in a lot of other tours and positions where it's very easily kind of come through the lines. You are the token female here, and you have to weigh what this opportunity means to you to be in front of X crowd or on X tour, and the intentions aren't so very genuine. And Excision, he's great. I mean, the whole team's great. I think there's very few places even now that would have allowed for a stage takeover like that didn't have a big label that's working with an agency that's working with whatever behind everything. And it was very cool. And now on top of that, you know, I've always said, since I saw firsthand, you know, a little bit of the derogatory male versus female kind of deal where, you know, all of these females really get pinned up against each other. And it's like,
100%.
You know, that's something that was very hard to kind of understand. But ever since I saw that firsthand, I've been able to like just understand the feelings behind it and realize that just as many men that don't necessarily see the value in women or the representation of it. And even in my short 4 or 5 years doing this, I've seen it change substantially. There were a lot of men on that stage for that whole night when I saw those videos. And I do believe that like there is this movement where guys are understanding and they're becoming more accepting and they're seeing the value and starting to at least make an effort to see a woman producer versus a male producer sitting in the same range. And, you know, I want to bring up the topic of ghost production very quickly because I think it's a little bit harder for that to potentially happen because you all do work behind the scenes, you know, whereas ghost production is part of our industry. It happens on both sides. And
oh no, it's huge.
It's huge.
Scoring.
Okay. So talk to me about that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to go too far into it, but and part of it is just how our industry is governed in scoring. It's not necessarily the fault of composers, but you know, every other department in post is allowed to have a team. Costuming has a team. They have a lead, they have the head costume, and they have their team. Editors have a team. Like everybody has a team, and it's fine. But for some reason, composers are supposed to be this singular person with little to no help. And, you know, it's great if you are on one project or two projects and they're smaller projects. I mean, when I did my Netflix show, the only team, and it was a lot of music. Like we were, you know, doing 45 minutes of music per 50, 55, you know, long episode. But I had a long schedule. I wasn't on anything else major. I was dedicating all my time to it. So the only people working on that show were myself, my husband, who's also a composer. He was my additional on that project, and then my music editor. That was it. But when you get to this crazy high level, when you're scoring, you see these, you know, top 5 people scoring multiple Marvel projects at once, or you're seeing people score 10, 12 projects, which is a reality. It's crazy that that is reality, but it is. They cannot physically produce the amount of music in these insane schedules that are expected. The schedules have ramped up so much in the past decade that it's crazy. I mean, if you're working on network TV, for example, which is anything like Fox or CBS, not streaming, they're scoring week to week a lot of the time. So they score an episode. As soon as it's filmed, it goes to them. They score it. Goes to the dub stage, they mix it, boom, you're on to the next episode. And that's like crazy. I've been on those schedules. With streamers, you seem to have a little bit more time, or at least I have. They tend to do, it's the show's done all at once and then it goes up. Similar to a movie, you just have a little bit of longer time frame than most television. But so it is partially the studio's responsible for that. and then partially the composers, because composers are not super transparent about what they're doing. And a lot of these, younger kids out of college are taken advantage of. But there are plenty of instances where being an additional composer is positive and you're credited properly. I've been an additional composer on many accounts for wonderful, wonderful people who give me credit properly, who pay me properly, who give you cue sheet, which cue sheet is where you're put as a partial writer, and that's how you get residuals, which is a huge part of being a composer, are residuals. But then there are composers who, underpay their employees, don't credit them properly, or credit them as something that is not an additional composer because they want to receive sole credit, which I think is a pretty gross habit, to be honest. And that I would equate to ghostwriting. Either they're not named at all as credited, or they're put as music arranger or something. It's just like a faulty credit to not show that the lead composer is using other people. And it just does everybody a disservice. It keeps perpetuating this like toxic hidden thing. But then again, with schedules and all this other stuff, that's not helping either. So it's not great. I feel like it's gotten better. One thing I appreciate about, someone like Hans at the level he's at is if you look at his credits, everybody's credited. At least as far as I know, everybody's credited. He did a video for Variety when Dune came out, and all the band, all the composers and like the instrumentalists he used were showcased. And I think it's really amazing when people do that and they, recognize that the score is not just you, it's all the people that helped you, if that's the case. So it's definitely a problem for us, but in a different way.
Yeah. And I feel like there are very unique parallels to what you kind of just spoke about. And then the world of EDM, where, the Tiestos and Hardwells of the world, there's no way
they're touring nonstop.
The capability when they're playing more than 300 shows a year and they're getting on a jet and going back in time and playing another show. But there's a way to do it properly and there's a way to do it not properly. And and I think that especially, the first kind of topic of conversation that comes to my mind is vocalists. I remember when I first started singing on tracks, and granted, I come from the world of like metal and post-hardcore, and I had been playing in...
I used to play in metal bands in college. That was like a whole thing. So, I toured with a metal band at one point.
I toured with a post-hardcore band, played bass, keys, and sang for junior, senior year of high school, freshman year of college. And when I got into electronic dance music, like my first few years, the biggest thing was transitioning into a DAW, because you're all sitting in a room writing, and then it goes, okay, it's just you. Let's figure this out. Yeah. You know how to write music. Let's figure out the language, And thankfully through school, it was very easy to understand certain DAWs, like Pro Tools certified, certain Ableton, certified. And that gravely helped, having instructors and mentorship. But when I kind of got with my first management team, again, big mistake, but like they had me, kind of being slotted for demos, sending out demos to a lot of kind of dubstep orientated producers. And the first few songs I did, I wasn't even credited as an artist. You see it all the time where it just goes features this name, but then they're not on the actual track. They're not.
It happened to me.
Yep, exactly. And
another reason why Tori Letzler is not in EDM anymore, it's TINYKVT, because I had to put my foot down and choose the things I was doing. And when I was doing stuff in the beginning, I was getting treated like garbage. And it infuriates me, because so many of these huge tracks, and I'm not saying these vocalists in particular that I'm going to name were treated like this. I'm just using examples. Mm-hmm. You have Halion. You have
Kara,
oh my God,
Run.
Kayla. Yeah, Kara. Kara's been very outspoken about this, and I think she's incredible. But the reason she left EDM was because, for the most part, she was being mistreated for the vocal production and the writing she was doing. You send like all of these big tracks, these like number one tracks in EDM. They 99% of the time started as a piano and vocal or version of that was sent to an artist, and then the track was built around it. It's very rare that people send instrumentals. I don't pitch top lines. I only will write on an instrumental if I do top line now, partially for that reason. but also because it's hard. I like producing and doing vocals at the same time.
Absolutely.
But people are just so disrespected, and I cannot understand why that is. And the reality is it mostly affects women.
Yeah. That is the reality. And I think I think it's gotten a lot better than it was even pre-COVID, pre-2020.
Sure.
The same exact thing happened. I did a track in like 2019. The track did really, really well. And I was just starting to release under Lizzy Jane, and my Spotify was not great. I didn't have a lot of tracks. And I was like, you guys, if I would have been credited properly on this would have been like a huge look for me. Like this would have like not only put an okay amount of money in my pocket, but like this would have been great to send as like pitches for tours and the next segue of music. And I was just so new and so unknowledgeable. And it was like pitching me to some of their other clients. And then you open the projects, or they would send you the project and I would be sending out demos. And it's like, why am I not even producing on this? That was a whole nother aspect of like, oh, well, you sing. Well, we don't want you to touch this production wise. We just want you to sing on this. And it was
this happens to me so I'm myself and my manager are very stern now. I do get hit up quite a lot for top line. And the response is, if I have something available, I'm happy. If it's taken from something else, but I know I don't write demos. I don't do top lines. And we'll say, the only way you'll get her to do vocals is if it's a collab.
Wow.
And a collab, I don't mean equal credit. I mean, I am in the production.
Yeah.
And I have pulled myself out of collabs where it becomes very evident that the other producer does not want me touching the track.
Mm-hmm.
And they've disguised the collab as, oh, that's the only way I can get you to do vocals. Okay, well, I'll let you think that you're working on the track, but I'm going to undo everything you've done or take the... And the moment that starts happening, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to say I have a very strong career in scoring. I've been, for the most part, financially stable for a while. And I don't want to put up with that shit.
No.
And I know I'm in a privileged place. Well, I mean, I worked for it, but like, I know I'm in a privileged place to be saying that. But I spotted it very early on with the doing stuff under my real name and then moving into collabs. And if I'm working with people or if I'm doing top line, it really has to be something that I believe in. I love singing on dubstep because I don't produce dubstep,
mm-hmm.
but I love dubstep and I play it out in my sets. And so doing like vocals for Level Up and Asteria, and then singing with Jeannie, and we're doing something again now, like people who I'm friends with and respect top liners and artists, like that I'm so
and it's
down
a win-win.
with.
It's great. It's a lovely working environment versus some team seeing your credentials and understanding your background and where you came from and saying, we love that voice. How do we get it? This is how we get it. And that's where I feel like when you get out of these friendship circles and just people within the industry that kind of have your back and have good intentions, teams can just get fucking slimy, and it's disgusting, and it doesn't make their client look better when through all of these emails it's just a bit of bullshit to get you to do what they wanted originally.
I will say also, like, I don't consider myself a top liner. That is a skill to be able. I mean, I look at like people like Chandler Layton. She is like a mastermind of songwriting.
Yes.
She goes into a room with a bunch of people and they write a song in a day. And like, I, for the most part, am not able to do that. Not only does sitting in a room with a bunch of people make me hella uncomfortable, but like, I just need to be in my cave by myself. I love working with people and sending stuff back and forth, but I am a very recluse producer. I just need to be in my own space and mess with stuff on my own time, and not have the pressure of somebody, sitting behind me watching what I'm doing. And I admire the people that are able to do that, but that is not a skill that I think I possess. And that's why I don't call myself a top liner. I will do top line for people. And when it turns out great, I love it. And I would love to, do top line on a Millennium track. That would be an amazing thing. But I just, some of those opportunities will not come to me because I don't write stuff like that in the sense of pitching demos. And I've come to accept that that's okay, because I'm just going to kind of keep pushing my solo music and then doing vocal work for people that are nice to work with and appreciative and collaborative. And so far, like recently, that's kind of hasn't been an issue anymore. I've just been like chugging along. I can spot bullshit kind of like a mile away at this point.
I think a lot of that is setting boundaries. I did the
Exactly.
same thing where I have a very unique voice, and it's not. I remembered when in like pre-COVID 2020 to kind of during and post 2021, I would get these demos, and half the time they would be, Kara or Run or all of the girls who are phenomenal top liners in the electronic dance music, industry and community. And I'd go, guys, my voice can't sound like this. Like if you want to work with me, then like you need to listen to all of the music I've put out and like make sure you like my tone of voice, make sure you like the uniqueness. I have a very raspy rock singer-songwriter voice, which I love. And I think that like
it's so unique
because of people like you and because of just other individuals and I'll put it out there, the uniqueness is, I feel like I've talked to a good amount of top liners. Like I remember when I had Danny King and Soundar on, and they both are wonderful and unique.
Two of my very good friends.
They're
amazing
so
humans.
lovely. Yeah, absolutely. And I just remember talking to them, and I just sat back and I was like, I could never fucking do what you guys do. The amount of demos, the amount of you have to sing in this key, and this is the melody we want, and this is this. I can't fucking do it. So and then on top of that, every collab that I would put out that were songs that I loved, that I had felt like I had a really strong foot in the production lane of, it was always, no, she just sang. She didn't do anything else on this. So it was like, you have to take yourself out of those shoes. And if you just have to write your own music and sing on your own shit and not have a single other person on it until they get the message, then that's what you have to do. And I feel like that's what you've done in your own way, where it's like not like it's a passion project, but it's like, I'm Lizzy Jane. I'm not here to work for somebody else. I'm not here to do this. Like I'm here to create my own artistic vision. And if you like it, that's great. And if you want to work with it for how I sound, that's lovely. Let's make something happen. But if you don't, I can't be a cookie cutter individual that can replicate vocals. I wish I could sound like a lot of those girls, but I can't. And it's something that was really hard for me for a long time, because like in the world of rock and in the world of singer-songwriter indie, you get really all of these different flavors and colors, and like you get to really be unique. But then you kind of hop over to EDM and it's like, no, this is like pop land. This is like, you need to sound like this if you're going to be played by Tiesto on Ultra at the biggest stage. And I was like, I'm never going to be that. Like, that's never who I'm going to be. So you have to fully commit to yourself and like finding your sound and being okay with how you sound and embracing it, instead of trying to force your voice into this range that it just simply will not accumulate to based on what I've been given.
Something you touched on, something that I have had to make peace with and recognize, and people will know this more once my EP comes out. The kind of music that I'm making and the last like 3 tracks that I've had come out, I have accepted that big artists are probably not going to play them out. And that's not shitting on anybody. That's not saying like, it's just, I don't make dubstep. I sing on dubstep, and I'm blessed with the fact that those tracks get played out a lot. And that helps me reach a bigger audience, because a lot of those people hear me and then they find my music and they're like, oh, we love this too. But for the most part, I don't see in the current space, my tracks getting played out by a lot of people. And that being said, like I look at somebody like Rez, and she's such her own sound. And while yes, it is mid-tempo, nobody else sounds like her. Mm-hmm. It's just her own thing. And the way that she has come up is doing her own shows and doing her own thing and staying true and having a really solid brand. So I know that there hopefully is space for me to just keep doing my own thing and connect with people. But it is a hard thing to be okay with all the time, knowing that watching other acts that are smaller or younger than me in terms of how long they've been around, it's skyrocket very quickly because of the genre they're playing. And it's constantly in my head of, well, am I just making bad music, or is it just the subgenre I've picked? And, for a minute I was making like mid-tempo dubstep-y stuff. And now I've really moved into more of this, like, I wouldn't say it's mid-tempo because it's fast. Like my EP goes between 110 to 130, and 130 is certainly not mid-tempo. I'm listening to a lot of artists in Europe that are doing this like techno industrial, but like it's slower, like hybrid genre. People like Matteo Tura and this woman named Sierra. There's just some really interesting stuff happening out of Italy and France and Germany. And a lot of it has not hit the US yet.
It always starts over there before it comes
here. I don't know
here.
if it's ever going to hit the US. It just seems like, I feel like there are people that are listening to it for sure. Those artists are streaming really well, but I don't know how it's translating over here. I think like the closest people to doing what I do currently are like Lucille Croft.
Okay.
But she's definitely headed in a more like drum and bass techno zone, which is great. We kind of started off more similarly. And then, Alan, One True God, who I'm going to get to support in January, which is going to be awesome. He's doing kind of like a mid-tempo bass house hybrid. And that's in the same zone as what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So there are a couple artists and they're doing well. I know there is space for it. I think it's just the reality of knowing that like I have to be okay with the fact that it's going to take me longer to get to where I need to go. And hopefully it pays off.
Well, no, and I mean, I think you've done what I've done in a very different lane, obviously, is it was very difficult for me. I think a lot of people who know me from Florida knew I had a residency. That was like how a lot of people, it's so interesting because you see other people's journeys and you think that your journey maybe needs to follow in a certain step like them. Like, oh, they came through, they did the residency, they got out, they got picked up by UTA, they went, they toured, now they're headlining, da-da-da-da. Certain person I'm referencing is no longer around and could have been the worst example that I could have ever had as this is an artist, because it was as far as an artist as you could get from. And I think that once COVID hit and I was no longer in that position, and coming out of COVID, I had the opportunity to kind of step in those same footsteps. After I had done my first 2 or 3 national tours, I came home. I was broke. I quit my full-time job, and I had to make a conscientious decision if I, one, really, really loved making heavy bass dubstep music, and 2, could see myself being in a position where I elevated to a point where it not only created financial stability, but allowed me to fully express myself as an artist, taking in my background and my experience and what I had envisioned for myself long term. And that answer was very quickly, confidently, no. So I had to backtrack and say, how do you incorporate your past music life of doing post-hardcore and doing metal and singing and screaming and doing lots of singer-songwriter indie writing with the influences of bass music and electronic music, and understand that everything I made from that point forward was not going to be hugely supported by DJs. The whole promo email kind of deal, I could send it and maybe people will listen to it and maybe they'll put it in their Spotify playlist because they think it's dope, but there's no way in hell they're ever playing that out. But you have to I feel like you have to ask yourself, are you in this? And don't get me wrong, there's people who definitely make dubstep, brostep, drum and bass, wonky, experimental music who definitely are successful in creating longevity. But I think it's a lot harder when you're doing what everybody else is doing. And especially with these label takeovers and girl gang's a different thing. But with the artist labels, I've always said, you will never be bigger than the artist who created that label who's putting you on. I truly believe that. I've never seen anyone elevate past that lead artist that has created that. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I will say from experience, one of the labels that I've just had a really positive experience with has been Deadbeats.
Yeah.
Not only do they just they've thrown me on a bunch of shows, and they support both female and male artists of all sizes. And I wish, I feel like so many other labels should look at them as an example of how to treat artists.
They're one of a few that I feel like does a great job. They are.
I think the reality of that one is it's hard to be bigger than Zed's Dead because they just show up and they just kill it. And those guys are so nice. And everybody, with the exception of lasers, every single person gets the same level of production on those tours. We get the screens. They don't turn people down. They don't turn the subs off. I've seen crazy stuff of watching my friends go and play and they won't even give a support act a mic to talk on. And I'm so the two artists that I've seen really put on great shows with support acts from labels that they represent start to finish have been Deadmau5 and have been Deadbeats. And I think, I don't know, but I think those labels and those artists understand that people are coming for the show. They're coming for them, but they're coming for the show. And why would you want to diminish somebody's experience? They're paying for a ticket. And if they show up at doors or for any of the support acts, why would you want them to not hear that artist at their full potential? And I think it speaks volumes about an artist's confidence. Yes. And it also speaks volumes about their team and the label supporting them when you have the full support behind you. And it makes everything better, and it makes the fan base want to show up for those big lineups.
Well, and they sell out every single show. I mean, on both ends. And
they don't even need support.
No, they don't even need support. And I will say that of the few that I've seen, in my opinion, do it to set their support acts up for success, they have given acts a phenomenal platform and fan base to grow off of. And I think that's why releasing with certain labels, especially that have a touring back end to them, is a really smart move for an up and coming act with a new team and with growing markets and putting yourself in places that maybe you haven't been before, or you're going to do a headline show or da-da-da. But I think long term, the only way that you're bigger than a Zed's Dead or than a Deadmau5, and again, it takes forever. And again, there's a reason why those select names aren't going anywhere and they haven't gone anywhere for a really long time, is to do something different and unique. And that's kind of what that full circle that I was trying to create, where it's I never want to shit on people who are giving people opportunities. But I also think that long term, if you're choosing to take the road less traveled, you just have to understand that your journey is going to be so different than the majority of your friends in this pocket, because your goals are different. Your long-term plan is different, and the music you're putting out is different. And it's one of those things where people are either going to love it or they're going to hate it, or they're going to hate it until everybody loves it. And then they're going to hop on the train, and there's nowhere in between. Versus saying, I'm going to make a banger of a track. I'm going to send it to Excision. It's going to be fire, and it's going to be 150 in an F minor, and it's going to be perfect for every single dubstep DJ to play out. And it's you can do both of that. I think there's a huge difference between banger tracks and records. And I think a lot of artists do both very well, where you can tell it's kind of something to really go off in a club atmosphere, a festival, large arena atmosphere, versus something that is extremely streamable and part of maybe a bigger cohesive kind of collective of records, like an EP or an album, and it gives you more of a universe to play in. I think that's what's so beautiful about EDM, is you can do both. But there's very few people, I think, that are doing what you and I are kind of aspiring to do, and can really stick to their guns and say, okay, more Kismet, very good example as well. I think a lot of people listen to Omar when they first popped up, and it was just one of those things where I heard them on SoundCloud and I was like, wow, this is out there. This is dope. And then all of a sudden their music started appearing everywhere. And now there's tutorials and people who
How to
try to make
sound. Yeah.
music like More Kismet. And like that's, in my opinion, like not the goal. They are a producer that does now perform vocally and rap. And I think that is so dope. But having a performative, I think, aspect to your project, singing, having a live show, having a live element is also just another, like, not necessarily hurdle, but it's another thing that you kind of have to
Yeah.
develop alongside producing all of these tracks that you're playing. And it's always interesting having a live element in club shows or at festivals that are
Oh,
predominant.
dude. I've been having the hardest time. So at Lost Lands, I debuted my cat ears, which are these LED like cyberpunky things.
Ooh.
And I quickly realized that at the current way that my setup is, I can't use in-ears and the cat ears at the same time.
Oh no.
There's too many wires and there's too many battery packs. It's like a whole thing. So I had to make a choice, and I was like, okay, I want to do the cat ears. And like when you're a small artist, I've been lucky that most of the time they request a sound check, I get it, which has been really a blessing. But I had to pick, and I was like, all right, I want to keep moving with the cat ear thing. So I'm going to, if I'm singing live at shows, I'm going to make sure that my monitors during those songs are turned up loud and they're facing me. If there are no monitors next to me, if they're facing out, I'm not singing live unless I have in-ears. Like, I have to be very cautious about the way that I do things. And, eventually, if I get to a place where I have a bigger team or I have, options to do an actual show that's just mine, or support where someone allows me to do that, then I can figure out how to incorporate both those things and make it all cohesive. But currently, I just have to show up and be like, this is the thing I'm doing. And I'll test it before the actual show and make sure I can hear myself. And if I can't hear myself, well, then we're not doing it.
Yeah.
And I do, like, I don't feel even bad about saying this. A lot of the time I just sing over the master, and I'll just turn the master down in the mix, because something about TINYKVT also, as opposed to when I sing on scoring, the scoring stuff that I sing on, it's like superheroes flying through the sky. And it's like these big, epic, crazy, like cinematic, beautiful vocals and like church stuff. TINYKVT is the complete opposite of that. And I want it to be. I process the living fuck out of my vocals because I want them to sound processed to hell. I want them to sound grungy and aggressive and sexy and weird. And unless I'm singing with like the lead taken out, but even the lead is processed and just over layers, it's not going to sound the same. And I'm okay with that, because my artist project is meant to sound a particular way and it's meant to evoke a certain thing. So if I'm going to sing over the master, I'm going to sing over the master, and it's just going to be another layer and you'll hear me. But like, my vocals are just processed to hell and I'm totally into it. And it's super fun for me. And I don't want it to sound like the pretty version of myself. And I think that was another thing, like you said, it's like, I'm not going to sound like, the vocals you hear on some of these tracks that are played a lot, because it's not the emotional. Actually, it's not true. I have a really emotional track coming out, but it's dark and it's mine. But like, for the most part, it's just not the vibe of the project. And that's fine. And people seem to jam with it. So
100%. That the whole singing thing in EDM too is very interesting, because I've seen acts start not having a vocal element and then they kind of incorporate a vocal element. But it's when I come to engineering my vocals, I either go, okay, you're tuning this to all hell and we're going to do something very organic and very pretty, or there's like 4 or 5 layers of my vocals and they're very distorted and they're not, it would be very difficult to take them out and still have the same effect without having an audio engineer or them having my racks in, you would have to have an audio tech there with you, or I would have to be MIDI mapping certain things through Ableton and running my vocals through Ableton, which I'm just not at the place of an artist for a lot of people that I'm performing with to entertain that. It's just something that's not built into a rider at the current time. And that's why I think I take more of an organic approach. But usually when I perform and it's songs that are not heavily processed, I'll do a re-export of my master with my vocals at like 2 decibels or 3 decibels. But I eventually want to drop those all out. But it's a very interesting thing because I've seen everything from people singing on top of their vocals to maybe they aren't even singing, I'm not sure, to people to
which sometimes you have to do. I'm not going to say what performance it was, but there was a very big performance that I did in the last year, and it's nobody's fault. It is like, this is just sometimes what happens. I was not provided a sound check, even though we requested it.
You can be fucked. You can be fucked.
This venue was fucking gigantic, and the artist had not been in town. We didn't really get to coordinate anything, and I was only singing the first verse up to the drop. Mm-hmm. And I basically got like pushed on stage and handed a mic. And it was like go time. And normally when I do my sets, I have a conversation with the sound engineer beforehand. I go, hey, can you leave verb on my mic the whole time when I'm talking everything? First of all, it just sounds cool when you're talking. And second of all, it's just you pick up the mic, everything sounds better with verb, period. Absolutely. It'll blend in with the track. I didn't have that conversation with the sound engineer because this venue was massive and it was a huge tour. For, there was a lot more going on than me and the support act. Mm-hmm. So again, nobody's fault, but I had to, not like, I was kind of singing, but I really could if I had just like belted it out, it would have sounded fucking terrible probably. Cause I was on stage with no monitors, wouldn't been able to hear myself. Mm-hmm. So like that would have been at the, it would have made not a good show for the people watching. And there was a lot of people there. Yeah. So like that is just something that happens.
And I see people do that all the time, but it's a circumstantial situation.
Yeah. It's not something I actively want to do or choose to do. And I've only had to do it in like 1 or 2 scenarios.
Yep.
I always try to like at least sing a little bit in the mic to like add that element. But like if you got no verb and you can't fucking hear yourself, like it's not a good scenario.
And especially like if you are a support act on a tour or if you are, travel runs late, you don't get your sound check. I've had to make shitty ass calls where I don't sing. And it's like, I've gotten to a point where I'm like, until I am at Alice in Wonderland level and I can actively differentiate DJ sets versus my hybrid live sets or fully live sets, I was like, singing is like part of my project. Like I've actively seen it enough now where when I sing, I capture fans. And that is something I know I have to do during, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I'm playing at Soundbar in Chicago or a club in Boston or playing before a dubstep act. Like I have to sing because that is what brings people to realize that not only like I'm different, but they get the videos and we connect and the eye contact.
Yeah, the moment you pick up a mic and start singing, everybody pulls out their phone.
Everyone.
And for a small artist, the possibility that you're getting posted on TikTok or posted on somebody's Instagram and reaching other people, it's great. And the people in the crowd know that you're trying to do something for them and put on a show.
Yes.
So like, I will try to do it as much as I can, but sometimes I think people don't realize like as a support act, and as it, kind of should be and is, we don't have like the resources that the main artists have, or, I mean, like, it's not the same thing. So it takes a while to even, I know artists that I think the general public would consider as big artists that are still in our industry considered support acts to an extent. Mm-hmm. And they're not even given the resources. I mean, I've had a VJ for the first time at Lost Lands, which was fucking awesome.
It's so different. It's such like an experience changing deal. Yeah.
It was amazing. I got to do a custom intro and it was amazing. And it was like the closest thing I've had to like the vision of this project ever. But, money and time and most tours where you're a support, if you're a lower support, you're not going to be able to do that.
No.
And that's fine. That is what it is. But like, I don't think audiences totally understand that.
No. And I don't think
that's also fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I think now more than ever because of TikTok and because of podcasts and because of like, people just speaking more transparently in the industry, because I think it's not, don't get me wrong, the agencies and management companies and labels do still control a lot of things that happen. I'm not going to say that that's gone away, but I think in the age of social media and reels and TikToks and all this stuff, there is this alternative journey and way to success and way to selling tickets and being successful in markets that wasn't there 10 years ago. And I think that's really awesome. And I think in turn, people sometimes speak more transparently about what goes on in the industry. And I've said this 1,000 times on the podcast, but a lot of acts that are playing first and second, doesn't matter how big the room, they're walking away with no money. They're walking away with little to nothing.
By the time you pay, like most of my shows, like the photographer ends up going home with more than me. And that's like, I'm not shitting on photographers at all. You know,
they deserve money too.
They deserve their money. But like, it's just, I'm like, okay, if I didn't have the career in scoring that I have, I would not be able to be doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't have been able to do the custom intro or hire a VJ. Like there are certain things that I get that most artists at my level might not be able to do. You know, little things. But I don't think people realize between flights and photographers and hotels, which sometimes it's covered, sometimes it's not. And I feel lucky that my fees have been increasing and no one seems to really fight me on them. But I have definitely, I've turned down shows, which I never want to do because I'm just like, I can't even cover one night
but
of the hotel.
But the power of no is strong. The power of no is very strong. And it's, you know, for certain opportunities, yes, I will play for a shit fee, walk away with nothing. Everybody walks away with more than me. But you know what? I walked away with so many, with the number of new fans I would get playing support on a whole tour in one night. That is worth it to me. You have to make those boundaries and decisions on your own. But
it sucks though.
It's
like,
but on the other side,
show if I could.
Exactly. But on the other side, you know, I've come to a point where we've been offered great tours for little to no money, and I can't do it to play second in a 1,000 cap room where I know that I'm going to be playing to 200 people and I'm walking away with nothing.
And I think it's also important to note that unless somebody is a big headliner, like a big headliner, that artist is not necessarily making a lot either, which trickles down to
they're paying the support acts out of their own fee.
Yeah, which I don't think people know.
Yeah.
So you can have an act that, while it's not an Excision level, is still, you know, selling out venues or close to it and playing bigger shows. Like they are making less than probably people think they make, and they also are paying for full production. They're paying for probably a TM. Like it's just so, you know,
agents,
they might be not
management. Everything.
Yeah, it's just so much stuff. And like by comparison to like the pop world, EDM is small potatoes.
Yes.
And I'm okay with that because I love how small the community is by comparison and how tight-knit people are, and that there is still this semblance of plur that exists, and you can, you know, walk into a festival by yourself and come out with fucking 10 friends.
Yeah.
That's why I love this. And that's why I loved going to festivals and still do. You will not get that in a mainstream genre for the most part. But the reality of that is, even though you go to these festivals and the production's crazy and you see all this stuff, it's nowhere near pulling in the money that like the pop world is. So,
and everyone's struggling.
Yeah.
Talent buyers are struggling. Tickets aren't moving like they used to be moving pre-COVID. Still 3 years, 2 years out of this. Like everybody's hurting. And I think it just comes from a level of compassion where it's like, I don't think the average fan realizes that most artists that they would consider to be nationally touring acts, a lot of them have full-time jobs, or they work remotely and have full-time jobs, or they do side stuff in the music world like Foley or ghostwriting. They have to. And all of like my privilege to being able to reinvest in certain experiences for certain shows, that money does not come from touring money. That comes from podcast money. That comes from work money. It all flows into this huge thing where it's like, Yes. Are you doing this at a legitimate level? Yes. Are you recognized and touring nationally? Yes. But are you making enough to drop everything and wake up every morning and say, I'm just going to write my days away? I don't know if in this specific lane, anyone gets there without having the opportunity to make enough money to turn around and reinvest that into whether you're doing stocks or your own business or you're doing brand deals or sponsorships. It's like the alleyway to being a large act is the way that it opens doors for you to actually make real money.
Yeah. And currently all of the money that I make from TinyKVT goes back into TinyKVT.
Yes.
My day-to-day is supported by scoring. Like anything. I pay out, my management, and anything else goes straight back in. I mean, that's still going into the project too, because Ian is incredible and he just, pushes me so far. But like, yeah, it all goes back in. And, most people that are doing this the way that we're doing it and all the time, and not just as a hobby, they're doing it because they fucking love it and they can't not do it.
Yes.
But
yes.
It's definitely going to take a toll on people financially and mentally. And that's why you see so many artists that have to step back from touring or have to take a mental pause, which is healthy, and they should. Yeah. And again, I'm really lucky in the fact that I don't drink, and I don't really, substances for the most part are not really for me, with the exception of things here and there. But, a lot of people, if you're in a party environment and in these clubs and these festivals all the time, if you're like dealing with anxiety as I do, I have severe anxiety, you're self-medicating with substances. And so it's just this, cycle of being in these environments, and it can really take a toll on people. And like, there's so many factors that, you really have to love this if you're doing it.
You do. And health and like mental wellness are like just a huge other conversation that I think now more than ever is getting light shined on it, and people are talking about it, which is great, because the first step in anything is talking about it and understanding the risks and how to approach certain things. And I don't think there's any human, no matter how healthy you are, no matter how much chicken breast you pack in your backpack, can play, can travel every day across the country, play a show, leave that place at 2 a.m., go to the airport by 6 a.m. and do it all again for 3 out of 7 days every single week, and it be mentally sustainable. And then all the while be financially stable and be able to create. That's very difficult. And I've found great success in monitoring my same thing with me. It's funny because like I went to a private school and I was like not the bad girl. I was just the weird one who was like in this band touring, and everyone else was like, everyone else was in theater, but yet everybody's parents, if I did something, they trusted their kid to do it with me because they knew I had this like outside life experience where
that was me.
yeah. And I feel like I've talked to other people where it's like,
which I'm not perfect, by the way. I made some stupid mistakes.
I made stupid mistakes, but I made it. I see people making the same mistakes that I made at 15 and 16 now. And I don't know if that's like accelerated life experience. I don't know for whatever reason it is, but it was just kind of this thing where like I was around drugs when I was 14 and 15. Like I saw it. Yeah. I was able to partake. I definitely like, it's kind of one of those things where I would try things and I would say, okay, like I don't have an addictive personality. This did nothing for me. I don't really have a desire to ever do it again. And I think that's been a blessing in this industry because I've definitely seen incredibly talented individuals get very lost when they've had that moment of opportunity. And it unfortunately goes to the Lee side because they just, whether they have that addictive personality or they're around the wrong people, it's very, very hard. It's like this uphill battle kind of deal. And I do feel like women in this industry and also people who maybe don't have that party mentality. I feel like my circle is small in this industry. Like even living in Denver where there's so many DJs here and there's so many artists here, and you're in LA where there's even more artists and there's even more industry people.
I mean, LA, there's a show every night. And
every night.
I love going to shows. And I just have to weigh it out sometimes. of there's a show tonight that I wanted to go to. But I'm just like, I'm on 2 movies right now. I'm working on my EP, and I just can't, like, my brain cannot have the bandwidth to then go to a show. I love going and supporting my friends, and I love, especially in LA, like, when you go to a show, like, there's so many people there, and it's people that can be from other cities, it's agents, it's such a good way of, keeping yourself in the loop. And I love it. And I love, obviously, the music that happens, and being in LA or being in Denver, you're very lucky because the industry is very strong in these cities. And the culture is very strong. I mean, a lot of these cities are responsible for the blow-ups of certain genres. And that's a cool thing to be a part of, and having the best venues and all this stuff. But I do have to weigh it out. There are weeks where I will go to 3 shows in a row, and then I'm like dead.
You're dead.
And especially if I'm touring, which I did, for me, I started really doing shows this summer and fall, really doing the schedule, which I hadn't done before. And after Lost Lands, I was like, I'm not going to a show for the next month. I just need to sit in my studio or sit in my bed and decompress. The other thing that people don't talk about so much, actually, I was somebody David Guetta or somebody big actually made a TikTok about this, where it was when you are on stage, you are at level 100. There are all these people just going hard. Dude. And then if you're in some random city, or not, but if you don't know anybody, you are back in a hotel by yourself. I went on a ghost tour in Charlotte, North Carolina, just because I didn't know anybody. I was there the night before the show, and I wanted to get out of my hotel room and walk.
Yeah.
It's just, eating healthy can be really difficult because, if you're in the middle of the country, stuff closes really early. The only thing that's open is Taco Bell. It's just, you don't have a choice. But man, the duality of all these people being oh my God. And then coming and sitting in your room by yourself at 3 a.m.
Especially
you're what the fuck?
Literally what the fuck? And it's been little things that over time that I've learned. I'll order 2 meals from the same place, one for now,
I
one
do
for
the
later.
Same thing.
Yeah, because so that way I'm not ordering shit. Or what I used to do, when I was doing tours in 2021, which was the first time that I felt I had dates, I would just not eat because I was so conscientious, and I had a little bit of a thing that I had to get over. And it was you can't not eat, Liz. You can't just shut down and not eat and just drink water. That's not going to work.
Ideal. I can't, my anxiety is very bad. So usually before a show, I'll eat a big lunch, and then I have to eat after if I'm going to eat, because I will straight up, I can't physically, it's not that I don't want to eat. It's just, I'm so adrenaline, going, I can't. But then after the show, if I can, I'll house it. And that's I have chips and salsa on my rider and stuff like that. So when I'm there and a little more comfortable, I can pick on stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very hard for me. I gag from anxiety.
Oh no. What?
So it's funny. Once I'm at the venue and on stage, totally fine. Even in the green room, totally fine. But
it's the day beforehand. It's the whole day leading up to that.
At Lost Lands, so we got there on Friday. I didn't play till Sunday, the last set, 2 to 3 a.m., right? Dude, the build up to my first big festival set, fucking gnarly. And so at I was okay, I have to play really late tonight because I'm an old lady. And I was all right, we're not going to go into the festival till 10 p.m. My, Sippy goes on at 11. I want to support her set. We got to take pictures. So I'll go in right before the stage opens. And I had done sound check earlier that day. Come 8 p.m. I am fully dressed. My makeup is on, and we're in an Airbnb with a bunch of people. I am just pacing.
Oh, no.
And my manager looks at me and he's I think we should go in. Because you're going to feel better if you're surrounded by people, you're watching other sets, you're there. And he was right. I just needed to everyone was we just need to get in, because if you just sit in this Airbnb and just think about what's going on, you're going to lose your mind.
It's the mind fuck. I mean, I remember after leaving the residency where I was playing every week, which again, it's kind of one of those things where I think I had played 2 shows before I got this residency at this big fucking club that Disco Donnie ran. And I have very many thoughts about the residency thing in general, because I know a lot of people, especially people from Florida, which is kind of weird. A lot of people came from residencies and they were also producers at the same time. I think it was just the amount of people that you could kind of attract and like start to build that base in that like home state market. But I remember having that, leaving the residency, going through COVID, and then having my first few shows after that. And I was like, do you remember like how to DJ? Like, are you actively like okay to step up there and like remember how to like, and like DJing? I mean, I get it. I think curating sets is definitely a craft of its own, but DJing is really not a hard task. But I just remember like the feeling of being on stage, and something that I did weekly routinely for a betterment of 2 to 2.5 years of my life, and then didn't do it for 6 months. It was like, okay, do you remember?
Dude, when I did my show in Chicago with Deadbeats, which went really well.
That was at Aragon Ballroom, right?
Yeah, biggest venue I've ever played, by the way. And people like, I was at doors, so like the beginning was like not super full because there was a security line out the door. But halfway through my set, there's thousands of people, and it's like my first big venue show, and I'm like, I had never touched 3000s before I showed up at my sound check.
That was my show at Armory with Excision. That was the first time I played on 3000s. I was like, fuck.
Now I've been playing on them and it's fine, and I'm used to it. But I was just like, there's just like said, like I load my settings into the decks, which I guess people don't always do, and like there's certain things like I was just they are done slightly differently on the 3000s, and I was so scared. I was so scared that like I was like, I don't know where this button is or this thing is, and like they're not that different at all, but like I was just in my head about like, oh shit, I've never touched this gear before. This is gonna be terrifying.
But the second you get up there and get through the first few transitions, you're like,
you're fine.
I'm fine.
You're like, great. It's literally the same thing. Stop being a baby. But
yeah, it's literally the same thing. Stop being a baby. But it's like, again, it's the mind games, and the more, and like that's why like to this day, I think going into like the next era where like I'm doing legitimate live sets, not just singing, like including instrumentation and stuff like that. That's something that you plan, I've been making now. I think I'm at minute 43 of an hour, and you create a set and you use the same fucking set for a year, and then you create another set and you do it for a year. With like the DJ hybrid sets, I mean, like I'm in my green room before I go on, like still not doing a final export of my set. But I think it's like something that's been just a method for me to not think about the actual nerves of performing or being like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do it, because I'm so focused on something else.
Yeah.
But it's just like I found that I perform well that way. And then in other aspects, I don't perform well that way. It's like these little things that are just so unique and different to everyone. And then again, what you were saying about the duality of the highs versus the lows. And it's not necessarily like the lows. It's just being in a room of 1 million people and like having these people come up to you and compliment you and like really just like blow smoke up your ass. And like, or like you're like hanging out with friends, or you have a big guest list, or it's everybody in one green room and it's a big fun time. And then you go home and you're like alone and you're like, wow, that was amazing. And you're still running off this high. And it's like having a significant other who is not in music and does not work in music, which I think has been one of the greatest things to like ever happen to me, just for the type of individual that I am, that it's really allowed me to like really focus on my goals and being my own person and not succumbing to what other people say I should be doing, or, oh, if you did it this way, you'd be doing this now, and all that stuff. And it's like, he'll notice. And it's something that I still work through. Like this past weekend, I had a killer show in Boston, and I come home and it's like, I'm still riding off that high. And it's like, I drank like an energy drink and like a shot of espresso. And he's like, you're like annoying the fuck out of me. And
go the fuck to bed.
Yeah,
dude.
Yeah.
So my husband, he does work in music, but scoring. And he loves to go to raves, and like he's the one that really got me into the big side festival things. But that being said, most of the time he doesn't come to show. He's not coming with me for 24, 48 hours to a city. He'll come to the big dates, like he came to Lost Lands, but like he has to work, and like it's not, so I'm by myself. But I call him after my shows and it's late. I mean, he stays up kind of late, and I'm like, blah, 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 blah. I'm like talking, and he's like, what? Are you okay? Like, sounds like you took like fucking speed, and it's just like your adrenaline's still going, and like you need to like vomit out all the like the stuff that happened, like, cool. And he's like, okay, cool, glad it went well, bye.
Yeah. No, literally, like, okay, cool. And it's like they obviously think what we do is like the coolest thing ever. And like that is like and I know that he's always extremely supportive of me, but like sometimes I come home and I'm like, the world's running on 1,000 and I have a million things to get done. And I expect you to get a million things done too. And that's just like not, it's that high that you still have from like that
I also have
experience.
ADHD, which doesn't help.
No, that doesn't help. That definitely does not help. Yeah, it's all of these things that you kind of deal with. And I am curious, like I do feel like when I have somebody traveling with me, not that it makes it a bit better, it just takes my mind off of certain things that I feel like I would be thinking about or running overtime on because I have another person there with me. But it's still like, it's just this really weird thing. And like, and I can't imagine how people like the Rezzes of the world, like the Zeds Deads of the world, who've been doing this for the better half of, in Zeds Dead's case, like a decade plus, you know, dealing with those feelings and just finding, and I'm sure it's just like the things that you figure out as an up and coming act, like you figure out ways to deal with that and like deal with other individuals in your life while having that like come down or come up or that energy sustainability, and it's a really interesting thing. And again, I just think that we're so privileged to be able to do this, and like there's a lot of people, I always remind myself every time I get down on myself, or you know, today all the Spotify raps came out, and you know, I think that's a really hard day.
It's a hard day for a lot of people. Yeah,
it is, but you know, then you realize and you're just like, dude, like so many people would kill to be in your position, and for one reason or another, you know, they aren't. And I think that's just something that you just have to remember all the time. And also remember that there's just so many like external factors as to why certain things happen to certain people, and to play like the why not me game will just never do yourself justice. Like you just have to like stay focused in your own lane. And again, going back to what I said earlier with us choosing really the path less traveled, you have to have like a strong fortitude of confidence that like you're okay with not getting certain opportunities or certain praise or certain support, because you really are on a different path than like your A to Z EDM journey as an artist DJ.
I think it's also like I did a show where to me the show was not ideal. My set was fine, but there was very few people there. It was part of a very large lineup and it was during the day. And, you know, I went in knowing that it was a possibility that a lot of people wouldn't be there. And my visuals were not played out. Someone else's visuals got played out. There was like all kinds of things that, not only that, it was an artist that wasn't on the lineup. So I was very confused how that happened, but regardless, and I didn't realize till I looked at photos and video after, but like, it wasn't ideal. And I got off stage and I was so hard on myself, but then I went back out to watch the other artists, and there was a group of girls that had been on the rail during my set, and I came back out and they called me over, and I went over and I looked at one of their wrists and I was like, "Are you wearing TINYKVT candy?" And she goes, "Yeah, I made it. And I made a bunch of them and handed them out to the crowd." And all of the people that had been on the rail, there wasn't a big crowd, but there were people on the rail, were all wearing them.
Aww.
And I started fucking crying, because as a small, newer artist, the fact that anybody is reacting to me and listening to my music by itself, but like reacting to that way or buying a ticket to see me, especially when it's part of a larger lineup with larger artists, that redeemed the day. And I had to just like check myself and be like, just because you didn't necessarily think that this was, you know, a great show for yourself, there were people out there that still enjoyed it. And when I'm on stage, by the way, I don't care if there's one person or 5,000, I'm still going to give the same show. And I will 100%. Always be like that, because those people that are there paid the same amount as everybody else and showed up to see you. And so they deserve the same show as everybody.
Yes.
But that being said, even though I'm giving 100, 110% on stage, when you get off, the reality of being hard on yourself hits you. But it was like a big reality check of seeing like, yeah, there was this group of people that solely bought those tickets to come see me. And made the effort to pass out this candy and care so much and just wanted to hug me. And like, that was like, all right, I got to remember that exists. And like, there are people out there that I'm connecting, whether it's a big show or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's those little moments that put everything in perspective. Yeah. Cause I've been, especially the first few tours that I was a part of, I was like just very new and didn't have like good, not mentorship, but just like, I don't feel like I had a really good like network of individuals to maybe give like proper advice on certain things. And I would always just be in the middle of my head. I'm like, I just hired media. There's nobody here. I'm playing for 5 people. But then afterwards, it's like, you're
I had
still
a photographer just show up 30 minutes late into my set at a city. And by the way, I still paid them their full amount because I don't want anyone thinking that I'm like a shit person.
Yeah.
So I'm like so scared of like someone being like this person. And so I was just like, okay, but they literally showed up 30 minutes into my set and
That's wild.
Yeah, I'm by myself. I don't have my management with me. I don't, so like you just have to roll with it. But I was like, what the hell, man? Like,
yeah. I had it was actually funny. It was actually the club that I just played this past weekend, which was such like a kind of growth moment for me where I could look at photos from 2021 and then look at photos from 2023. And I was like, okay, like you're moving the right direction. Like this feels a lot better. But I remembered that my management at the time had hired on their in-house media, and the rate of the in-house media was more than I was getting paid. And he had come into my green room after. It was like a shared room, and he was like, hey, how do you want to settle? And I was like, in my head, I was just like, oh, well, like my management hasn't told me like what I owe you yet, but like I'll make sure I settle with you. Like, let me know. And he was like, yeah, it's gonna be like $450. And I was like, what the fuck? I was just like, yo, what? And I remember pushing him off to my management because I was like, none of this was communicated. I've never paid somebody $450 for a set. And like, it was just a really like learning experience. And again, it's just, there's so many little lessons you learn along the way that you go, okay, not going to do it like this again, going to do it like this again, but all the while making sure that people are like appreciated and compensated for their work. But you also oftentimes, like, 2 things that always like sit in my own head is like, don't spend out of your own pocket. Everybody's situation is different. And like on the like fact of like burning bridges, like not everyone is always as genuine as you're going to be. And sometimes you have to.
That's why I paid the photographer.
Yep.
I was like, I'm not going to risk this person saying anything negative to me. I'm just going to pay them. And then, and I'm probably, unfortunately, until I get to a larger level and that, I don't have to maybe deal with that stuff, I'm always going to be like that. Cause it's just like, someone told me a saying where it was like, just got to charge it to the game. And I've been like, it's painful, but I'm just like, all right, we're going to charge that one to the game.
Oh my God. So true.
I did so merch for the first time at Lost Lands. Boy, oh boy.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to get into it too much, but
I can't imagine.
Shipping stuff to a festival is so fucking expensive.
Yeah.
And I hardly made any merch. I just did like a little bit to like, have stuff at the festival and do a test run. And I'm just like, I just got absolutely raped on like shipping.
Yeah.
I was just like, and then you got to ship it back if it doesn't all sell. I'm like,
and
or
they take a percentage
take it in your life.
And then it takes them 1,000,000 days to pay you out. And then, and that's with anywhere. I totally get why a lot of artists just do it online. I totally understand that until you're to the level where you have your own company shipping. They already have prepackaged, discounted shipping labels and they're handling everything. But like, even then, I mean, like Red Rocks, like we sold out of merch both nights, but like at the end of the cut that they took, I maybe made $1 to $2 off of each product that we sold. Like it's just, that's the reality of certain things.
And that's just not EDM. That's like, it's actually even worse in metal. And like, I was actually surprised at how low the percentage was at this festival versus like, I wasn't selling merch when I was on tour with this band because I was a guest performer, but they were getting like 40-50% was getting taken out.
Great. Yeah.
So I haven't really encountered that yet, and I from what I've understood, that's not necessarily a thing in EDM. It's not quite that high, but like Yeah, that was a big learning curve, and that was another charge into the game moment.
Yeah, merch is like how a lot of
artists
artists
make a lot of money.
make a lot of money like that. Like when I have a solid merch drop that does really well, I walk away with about the same money that I walk away with off of maybe 2 or 3 dates after expenses. It's a huge thing, and that's why I understand why all of these A-list acts, like all of the big guys, like when you have the money and the team and the rotation to drop merch all the time, it is a wonderful way to actually make money to reinvest back into your project. It is. But
if you're as small as me, maybe don't ship stuff to a festival.
Maybe don't ship stuff to a festival. Or the other thing that I've seen discussed in our little Twitter chat or the Girl Grain group is merch contracts with sleazy ass merch people that say we're going to forward you all of this merch and we're going to pay for all of it. But then you owe us all of this on the back end, and then you still owe us if it didn't sell, and like all of that. Yeah. I don't know if you saw that, but I
missed this, but that's bananas.
Yeah. I've like had certain individuals come to town when I lived in Tampa, and they were like, "Yeah, I owe this merch company like $4,000." Like, and like I'm never gonna like merch that like accumulated interest, like just wild shit, wild stuff. So. I mean,
thankfully, the company that I've been working with has been awesome. And I know a lot of other people use them.
Yeah.
At least in LA. So that's been good.
Do you do the merch shop? What is it called? Where people go and they press their own merch. I think that's so cool. And I don't know what it's called. A Ghost in Real Life uses it. I've seen Jeannie there. I've seen.
Oh yeah, it is. It's Merchbox.
Yeah.
I haven't pressed it myself, but that's where I get mine done, and they're awesome.
Yeah. That looks very cool.
They're awesome. I went in, I tested all the stuff. Honestly, I think they do the majority of women in bass.
I love that.
Like, or at least I live in LA, which is super cool. And they have a lot of options. Their pricing's good. I love the work that they did. They actually designed, I was working with more like a public version of my logo. Like it was an image that I liked and I was using it for years. But they created my actual new like icon for TINYKVT, which is great. I didn't know that they did that. So shout out to Merchbox.
Love that. That's amazing. Do you like the culture of living in LA? I mean, I figure you would because it's like you've been there for 11 years, but I also know you haven't been in electronic music for 11 years. Like that whole culture. Is it a lot? Is it manageable if you're around the right people? I've heard everything from it's a nightmare to it's like my favorite place to be.
I love it, but first of all, I'm older. Mm-hmm. When I first moved to LA when I was like 20 turning 21, I didn't know anybody except for, because I was a performer, I knew actors. I went to performing arts high school for a minute. So like, I knew like people that were on TV shows. I was very much ingrained in like the Nickelodeon and Disney world. Mm-hmm. And when that was like still a thing, when like Miley Cyrus would like show up to parties I was at, that age group, like that thing.
Yeah.
And they were like wild house parties or going to clubs with promoters and being at a table. Like one of my best friends was a promoter and I was like at a club every weekend, which I would hate now. I can't even that's such a different version of myself. But I got wrapped up in that world for a minute strictly because I was lonely and I didn't know anybody else.
Yeah.
When I got further along into scoring and started developing a network there, I quickly started getting away from that. But I would imagine if you're young and some of these producers, like I look at ISO and Knock 2, who are fucking incredible and killing it, but they're so young. And I wonder about these really young artists if they're okay in these scenarios and like how do they deal with it? Because I wasn't necessarily okay. It was so much to digest. Mm-hmm. Even in like the small club world that I was involved in. And I mean, like I was so broke when I first moved to LA that I would go to fancy like Hollywood mansion parties to get free food. Yeah. Like that was the level of broke that I was.
Yeah.
Because I knew that like, if you like, I remember I showed up, there was a big house. They were doing a rap party for Glee. How the fuck I got invited, I don't know. But I was like, they're going to have awesome food. Like that was my one reason for going. I'm surprised I didn't have like bags in my pockets, like put stuff away for later. But like I did that. But then, as I got like 22, 23, 24, I had pretty much taken myself out of that. And again, because I don't have issues with substances, it does make it easier.
Yeah.
not, most people to be honest, have some sort of issue. It's just so
Yes.
ingrained in our culture. But LA, you have to really have like a strong sense of self and a bullshit meter.
Yeah.
And I think coming into EDM at an older age and finding my people, like, there's a lot of clout chasing that goes on in LA, and I've just never been. I want to work with people because I fuck with what they do and I like them as people and they're genuine. If they happen to be a big artist, then great. But that's not my incentive for the people that I have in my circle. And there is a very strong group of people that I trust. I've made very good relationships out here. And, it is nice that there are shows every week, throughout, honestly, like 7 days a week. It's not like other cities where it's just a Thursday through Saturday game. We have shows pretty much Tuesday through Saturday.
Okay.
If not more so, to be honest. I mean, we got like Space Yacht on Tuesdays. There's a brownies and lemonade tonight. There's another thing on Friday. Like there's shows all the time. And so I'm in a lucky position where like it's easy to meet individuals in the industry just by being in proximity.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. And I like being in a city that's exciting and has a lot to do. I'm a very active person. It's funny. I consider myself an extroverted introvert, meaning I am very okay with being isolated and being in a studio and not leaving my house for a week, but it's not healthy for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I do go out, and once I'm out, I'm very good at, I enjoy socializing and I enjoy having a good time being around people a lot. And I consider myself a people person, but then I need like 2 days to recharge my mental state.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I love LA. It's not for everybody. I have a house here now. My studio is in my house. Like I put in a lot of blood, sweat, tears, hours to give myself the life that I have. And I'm very grateful. And there is a certain amount of luck associated to that, but it's also just hard work, and it's not for everybody. Like some people work better living in a cabin in the middle of the country. Like Denver is it's a little more outdoorsy. It's still a huge city for electronic music, and it's a major city, but it's a little more.
You have that balance. I feel like it's hard to like. You definitely can escape in LA. Like I've been in LA long enough to understand at least like the geographical layout where like you can remove yourself for sure.
I live like baked into a mountain. My house is built into the side of a mountain, and not in like the Hollywood Hills. It's like it's like an area that's like a little more off the beaten path, and we're surrounded by like a valley. So like I hear birds in the morning. I don't hear cars.
Yeah, which is lovely.
Yeah, and I also grew up in New York City. So I came from a big city to it. Like for me, LA is like, oh my God, beautiful trees. And
it's not like a culture shock. You're not like coming out here from wherever being like, holy fuck, LA.
No, I didn't move from Oklahoma to like, it's just, situational. Like I came from taking the subway to high school to moving in a city where I have a car. And I'm on like a neighborhood street and nature, and there's coyotes that like show up at my door at 7 a.m. Like it's a different thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like if I was in LA, I would probably want to live in Burbank. I would want to live on the other side of LA or just a bit removed, because that's what I love about Denver. Like I live in our art district. Like we walk everywhere and we have that accessibility to be in the city, even though the city, I say like Denver's big enough to have districts, but it's still a small city. And then you have the mountains, which is like the better reason why we kind of moved here, before I realized how truly big the music kind of runs our city and runs through our city. And, again, it's there's a lot of similarities. There's shows. Yeah. I would say Wednesday through like Sunday day parties. There's shows all the time. Summer's crazy. Summer, you've got day shows and then you've got night shows, and there's so much to do. And yeah, there's definitely like circles of people where I will say, like, coming out here, being so like heavily involved as like, let's say like a regional growing act in Florida versus being out here, it gave me the opportunity to be involved or not be involved. And I like having that kind of choice where it didn't feel like it's like a necessity for me to like be there or show face or see the person that's coming to the club that you're working at or to build these relationships. It was kind of more like, oh, like I moved here, but a lot of people don't know I've moved here. And I played Red Rocks, but most of the people who discovered me at Red Rocks have no idea I live in Denver. And like, it's a cool.
I didn't know you lived in Denver, and we're friends.
Yeah. So it's like, I like having that because I'm exactly how you are, where like, I love being at home and I definitely like, we own our flat. And like, again, like one day I would love to have a house in the mountains where we have our flat and we Airbnb it and I can still come here where I'm traveling and we're 15 minutes from the airport and it's nice and easy. But like having that ability to where like, I love where I live. And I think it's when you go somewhere and you're like moving to relocate because of like the opportunities there, like I'm sure you feel a lot different in your home and your living space now than when you moved here 11 years ago and you were just trying to get by. You know, it's such a like, it's like versus like waking up in a box, which I've done, versus waking up in a space that like you love being in and you're happy to be in. And like, I could go days without leaving and just walk my dog and be really, really happy. But then once I'm out, I'm really glad I went out. But the biggest thing with definitely moving here was like, everybody was like, oh, I'm in Denver tonight. Kind of like with LA with shows, like whenever you have friends coming.
We have an extra bedroom in our house that we joke it's like the touring DJ bedroom. Actually, it's lately become Blank's bedroom because he's been playing so much in LA.
Yeah.
And JP's there all the time and I love him to death.
And he lives in Denver.
Like, he does live in Denver.
Like 15 minutes from me.
Fucking been to Denver. I really need to. My thing was like, I'm not going to go to Denver until I get booked for Red Rocks. Like that's the thing in my head. But like, I have friends there. I should really like go and visit. But we have like, when people are in town, like they hit me up and they're like, yo, can we stay with you? And then they have their own bedroom. They have bathroom. We have like home cooked meals and they have this, like, it's,
that's
amazing. In nature. And it's like a nice thing. I like doing it. Sometimes it gets a lot. We'll have like people like back to back.
Yeah, that's hard.
But
that's
I mean,
difficult.
Most of our friends that stay here, like we all do our own thing. Like we might go out to dinner one night or something and we'll go to the show, but like they're off at sessions or doing a shoot. I'm working. So like everybody's kind of autonomous and they can have their own like freedom. But yeah, we definitely have like the spare bedroom touring DJ space. Cause like in LA, similar to Denver, you just have people rolling through all the time.
Definitely.
But, and I have a photo, when I first moved to LA, my setup was like a 44 MIDI piece of shit keyboard with my laptop. I had an M Audio like little interface that cost, I don't know, like it was nothing. Like speakers that I had like little tiny speakers that I had got like on sale from somewhere. And then a second, like an old Dell screen that I had gotten off Craigslist for like $30.
Yeah.
And it just sat on my desk and I had like and then I compared it to, I was lucky enough after being in LA for 11, 12 years to buy a house. And then I have a professionally built studio in my house that's treated and I have a custom desk and my synths are wired and my microphone, and like looking like the perspective of those two things was such a crazy moment. And it had to act as just a reminder to myself, like, no matter how hard you are on yourself or where you think you're at or where you're going to be and where you would like to be, you really need to look back and see where you've come from and the growth. Because if you had told me when I moved to LA that I would be doing, first of all, if you had told me when I moved to LA 10 years ago that I'd be a fucking DJ now, I would have laughed at you. I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, that's such a crazy thing to begin with. But having the career in film plus that is just like, I need to like knock on wood and like think every day that I'm truly lucky and like hope, even if we just stayed here, like most people do not get to have the opportunities and do the things that I've done. So
absolutely. Well, so happy we finally got to discuss. I feel like I literally could talk to you for a very long time. So we'll definitely have to do another one, maybe a year or so down the road. And you have so many endeavors and it's really awesome to see somebody who not only, being a woman, but like you've really just like killed it and you've taken your time in so many things.
Thank you.
And I hope you do, like, you're able to like take a step back. And even if you're like frustrated in like one lane, like you're so accredited compared to most of the people that we work alongside with every day. Like everybody has like their thing and everyone has like extreme amount of talent that we're surrounded with, which we're so lucky to be around to begin with. But like, you are seriously like a very high inspiration to like my personal long-term goals. So I appreciate you coming on today. And when I'm in LA for Countdown, we should hang out.
Also, I have a room for you.
I know. I may be texting you about your room in like 10 minutes. But yeah, no, I have a whole week planned. So I'll be there like the 27th through the 30th. And then I'll be back here so I can be here on New Year's Eve with Wesley. So I will definitely, I have podcast plans and sessions planned, and we're kind of facilitating everything now that we finally have our dates locked in. So I'll definitely text you. And yeah, thank you so much. I'm so excited for people to get to learn more about you, because I feel like half of the people in like the EDM world, they don't know about your other side. They don't.
Probably not. It's really funny. Like, before we go, like I posted on like my TINYKVT page that I like wrote music for Fortnite.
Dude,
and like people were like, what the fuck?
I didn't even talk about any of this. I saw, this is what sucks, because we're already 2 hours in, but this is what happens with a good conversation.
We need to cut it.
I know. Like, I need to cut it and I need to stop. But like Assassin's Creed, like the shit for Haunted Mansion, like your voice in like Batman vs Superman, Top Gun, American Horror Story, like insane. And I'm going to put like a big bio on you. So hopefully people read it. If not, I'll like post it fucking everywhere. But yeah, just keep killing it. And I'm very excited. And either way, I would definitely love to check out your studio when I'm out in LA. So let's do it.